Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon as we start to bring together top industry leaders to discuss how to both uncover, attract, and hire talent in rural communities. My name is Patrick Hartman. I'm currently living in Pennsylvania, and I'm a senior talent executive on the FlowerHire team, where I help lead our cultivation practice. I've been with the amazing FlowerHire team for almost 2 years now, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with you and also our panelists. So I guess the big question is, why are we here today? I think number one, the cannabis industry is really poised to help revitalize small town America and already has in some cases. Honestly, there's no larger job creating vehicle for brick and mortar, light industrial, and agricultural jobs than there is in the cannabis industry. So that being said, for the correct experience and attitude for the cannabis industry is super essential. So we're really gonna dig in here on how we can uncover local talent and attract them to the cannabis sector when an organization or operation is in a rural community. And that includes discussing topics like the challenges of operating in a rural location, benefits of being a big employer in a small town, and unique strategies to find and entice talent in a specific location. So at the end of the panelist discussion today, we will have about 15 minutes for an open floor question and answer. All the viewers on this webinar, feel free to use the Q&A function on your screen to submit questions, and we should be able to get to most of them at the end of our panelist discussion today. So with that being said, let's take it over to meet our panelists, and who I'm very grateful for joining us today and sharing their experience and expertise in the industry. I'll start with our first panelist, who is Dennis Pake. He's the facility general manager for Ascend Wellness Holdings. Thanks for being here, Dennis.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And then our second panelist, we have Kelly Freeman. She's an HR business partner with Maggie's Farm in Colorado.
Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Kelly. And then our third panelist is Matt Radebach. He's the National VP of Cultivation for Air Wellness.
All right, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be part of this.
Absolutely. Great to have you here, Matt. So I guess kind of starting with the introduction so we can learn a little bit more about each of you. I'll start with you, Dennis. Tell us a little bit more about your path and career in the cannabis industry and what you currently do now.
So I started in cannabis. I moved to Colorado in 2012 to join the green rush and everybody else trying to get out there and get into the industry and get started. I started working out there. My first job was as a trimmer. Was doing that for a little bit. They saw something in me, so they moved me on up, went into cultivation. Within 8 months, I was running and operating a grow out there, and then I took over the state operations for post-harvest for a company out there. Was doing pretty well at that. My brother was working for a company in Florida. At the time, they were only doing concentrates, and they were about to switch over to selling flower, so he asked me to move out there. So I was doing all the post-harvest work, managing everything from the harvest all the way through to the packaging for a company in Florida before I moved out here to Illinois to take over the director of ops role. I did that for about a year and 6 months, and then they promoted me to the GM spot that I'm currently in now. So I've run the gambit in cannabis. I've tried to do it. I didn't try and do it all. I did most of it. And it got me to where I am today.
Absolutely. And sounds like too, you've touched a little bit of every process on the back end of what we know in cannabis cultivation and production as well. I'll take the same question over to Kelly. Tell us a little bit more about your path in cannabis and what you currently do.
So I'm relatively new to the industry. I've been with Maggie's for a year, which is my first foray into cannabis. Previously, I was in laboratory space as well as working with government contractors.
Awesome. Thank you. And even for some of us that are newer into the industry, even a year teaches you a lot from all our personal experiences, I'm sure. Matt, I'll take it around to you as well. Tell us about your path in the industry and what you currently do.
Yeah, my path, I've had a long path. I started in operations in Rhode Island in end of 2014. My dad won a license in 2011, was one of the first dispensaries east of Colorado. From there, I opened up his Massachusetts vertical operation, it's a Boston suburb. During that time, I kind of got the entrepreneurial itch and decided to go and attempt to win a grower processor license in the state of Pennsylvania. My partner and I worked many hours doing the phase 2 application. We wrote the application and won Pennsylvania grow processor in rural Pennsylvania, Schuylkill County, which is look forward to talking about that. And I was acquired by Air Wellness. I've been part of the Air Wellness family. I am doing national cultivation operations with a very talented team, and it's just exciting to bring high quality cannabis to scale. And still outside of that, I have some of my own operations still in New Jersey and Massachusetts.
Awesome. That's great. And for the viewers as well, I'm located pretty closely to where Matt started his operation in Pennsylvania as well. So super excited to hear some of the experiences you've had as well in bringing that operation online in Schuylkill County. I guess taking it to Kelly too, tell us a little bit too about your experience working in rural areas, and maybe something right now about your job or organization that really excites you in your role.
So we are strictly an outdoor grow. We started our farm in a rural area. We're down south, southern Colorado, along with 8 dispensaries. One of the things that's very exciting about this last year is we've just expanded into New Mexico as well. So we have a nice outdoor grow there. We've also secured 9 locations for dispensaries.
Wow, that's awesome. Definitely excited about the New Mexico market and some of the newer markets in the Southwest and Southeast that we've been seeing moving initiatives forward as well. Back to you, Dennis, as well. Tell us a little bit about your experience working in rural areas and something that you're super excited about right now.
I've worked in an outdoor farm in southern Colorado as well, Pueblo, beautiful place. There is very different than in Florida, which is also in a rural area, in the panhandle of Florida, and now here in an even smaller area in Illinois. You will get very different communities from those different areas. Like in Florida, it's a large agricultural state, and you get a lot of immigrant workers, and that is a very different workforce than you get here in the Midwest, where it's a lot of mechanized farming. So they don't need as many hands in order to operate farms here as you did there. So the population is a lot more sparse, and you get a lot more people that are used to riding on tractors and being out in the fields, and people that are used to manufacturing jobs, working production lines. So it is good and bad having these sparse populations out here in the middle of the country. So it is great to work with these people, because there's really a sense of community in these small towns, where they get a lot of buy-in from them, especially once they realize that they enjoy their job and the company is here to make lives better, on top of making profit. We want our workforce to be successful and have good lives, and that is how we do better as a business.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously we'll be talking about some of those positives and challenges that are faced in rural areas too, which I'm very excited to hear about from each of you. But with Matt, what is your experience working in some of these rural areas, and what do you think is the most exciting thing about your role right now?
Well, obviously I had the experience from, founding a company in a rural area. We had tons of sites to choose from in Pennsylvania. If the scoring process, there were bonus points if you picked kind of certain areas that were not rural. We chose to go with the rural area because it has such a strong manufacturing background. The town we're next to has the oldest brewery in America, Yingling. So it's exciting to find an area where people have a work mentality. It's coming to work each day, it's working within a process, and it's just a pride in the job. So, and with my job right now, I love what I do because it's all about quality for me for cannabis and making sure the best products are getting in the hands of patients and adult use consumers, and it's letting me have a larger impact with crop planning and genetic kind of decisions with under the SVP of cultivation. So it's really letting us bring high quality to scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that too. And I think something that we will discuss a little bit further is about that that switch from maybe manufacturing and industrial jobs in some of these areas and how that translates to the cannabis industry as well. But I guess talking and first of all, maybe starting with the challenges of operating in a rural area. Kelly, I'll throw this one to you first, but do you have any insight or why do you think companies specifically choose sites that might be a little bit more rural or urban areas as their site selections?
Well, for us in particular, we've been primarily an outdoor grow. We're clean green certified, and so we were really looking for where we could get the best soil, the best sun, the best air, and a good amount of land. And along with that came a very enthusiastic workforce. They were very much looking forward to having this cool new industry to enter into. The area we established our business in, it didn't have a lot of opportunities for the people there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think Matt too, probably a little bit expanding a little bit on what you were saying about the Pennsylvania operation and in terms of your selection process of why you chose to go into the Schuylkill County area. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and like some of the typical considerations or expectations for like markets and regulatory groups when they're choosing where to position these sites?
I think when it comes from the owner side, number one is the relationship with the town.
Mm-hmm.
I think it always goes there first. Like what when you're working with the supervisors, commissioners, mayors, selectmen, it's how is that synergy going to be? Is it going to be a true working partnership? Because it's all about a partnership with the town first, because that is your first line for recruitment. It's helping open the door for recruiting events, to introducing to great hardworking people. So it really starts with the town, and then in cultivation, it's a lot easier because it's just about making sure you have access to, good water, electricity, kind of a stable power grid will always be the big thing for you, making sure that it's a good access to kind of catastrophic events with major utilities. So it's that infrastructure needs to be there, but it really is the town relationship, because that becomes your true partner in this.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think a lot of times with talking about like climate or weather related issues with some of these rural areas, being in Pennsylvania, in the winter months, you can experience snow. And that's always a challenge to have individuals have reliable transportation to get to some of these sites. But then out in a site in California, for example, you're dealing with wildfires and droughts as well, too. So lots of factors to consider in site selection. But Dennis, wrapping that question up with you, what are your thoughts on why companies are specifically choosing some of these sites that are in these rural areas?
So you are looking for some place where you have site security is part of it. You're looking at where you can have the most impact on the community that you're going into. A lot of these rural areas, land is cheap, buildings are cheap. So there's the cost benefit of operating there. Sure, you got to travel a little bit further to drop your product off, but in the long run, that cheap land and building space is going to do a lot for you. The other thing is, like Matt alluded to, there's less and less jobs out there, especially through the pandemic. People just weren't working, and having one of the premier employers in the area, people are looking to you. The people that worked here during that period, spread word of mouth very quickly. You don't have a lot of competition out there that you got to compete with airwaves and radios and advertising to get jobs here. It's in rural areas, it's the word of mouth that spreads it best for you.
Yeah, and maybe not like just the premier employer, but sometimes in some cases the only employer too. So finding that fit as far as skill sets go, and we'll talk a little bit about retention of those employees as well. But since we're talking about your site a little bit specifically, tell us a little bit more about Ascend Wellness and the site that you operate right now.
So Ascend has been here in Illinois for about 3 years now. We're located in about central Illinois. We're 4 hours south of Chicago, 2 hours north of St. Louis. We are really surrounded by cornfields. The closest city has a population of 40,000 people. The next closest one, 17, and then there's another one with another 17. All of these cities are anywhere from 40 to 50-minute drive from the actual facility itself. So we really depend on the small towns and villages that are around us for the employment opportunities here. I'm sorry, I kind of lost track. I got stuff going on in the background. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I think that's sometimes the challenge, right, of being in a more rural location itself too. And like I mentioned previously, we'll start to explore some of the benefits of that and how retention works as well. But I guess Kelly, with sites with your organization, how rural do these compare to maybe like a site like Barry, Illinois, where it's probably a 30-40 minute drive from any major metropolitan or city area?
We're probably a 40-minute drive from the nearest small town.
Okay.
And yes, we're out in the middle of nowhere a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah. So we do got a lot of people that commute, but we offer, flexibility with their hours, and that seems to work.
Awesome. Yeah. And Matt, kind of wrapping this little topic up with you about the site specifically, and maybe related to Pennsylvania, but not to necessarily stereotype, but initially selecting the site, was there any pushback or acceptance when the site was coming online and working through that process?
No, I think we were very lucky working with Norwegian Township. They were excited to have us. We did a bunch of community events in the lead up to the application, and we had neighbors giving us resumes and telling us about friends they had that had experience in manufacturing, industrial farming. And it was just, people were excited. They were excited to see new jobs coming into the market, where kind of jobs kind of went away along that 84, 81 kind of beltway, where you saw some of those manufacturing jobs go away, which is very sad because it's such a talented population that was making great manufactured products, that worked hard, they care about their neighbors, and it was I think they were happy to see that they kind of have something new. There was a new industry, and there were some of the other growers that were popping up north, east, south, and west of us. So they saw this as something that was new.
Awesome. And were there, I guess, following that same line, were there like what has been strategy, if needed, as far as like local government relations and like community outreach? How do you handle that aspect of it?
You're, as an owner, you're front and center. You need to be the one that's going to give your cell phone number out if there's a problem. The neighbors can call you, and you have to have that ownership of it, saying, listen, if you have an issue, call me. It's going door to door. I've knocked on doors and lead up to letting them know that we're going to do an event, so they're not surprised by a certified mail notification that we're hosting a community meeting. That's just part of it. It's the community outreach starts day one, long before you put a shovel in the ground.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great, and the accessibility is what rings through through that message overall, and being accessible by the community or government relations if needed. Kelly, with Maggie's Farm, how much community or government relations outreach do you personally do, or how does the organization handle that?
We are just very transparent with the regulating bodies. One of the benefits we had is that in Colorado, we're successful at being compliant, and we were able to bring that to New Mexico. So we really were able to show them that even though cannabis might be a semi-new industry, that it was not new to us. And we were just transparent. Much like Matthew said, we were accessible. our owner did go and meet with, different people in the community, and, we were just very open about what we were intending to do there.
Yeah, I again, the accessibility and transparency aspect of it, I think is key to getting the buy-in if there is any pushback in some of these communities. But on your front, Dennis, what would you say are, at least at this point, or from what you've experienced, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges right now of operating in a rural area?
So some of the biggest challenges are logistics. We order something and we ask for it to be overnighted, and it actually takes 2, sometimes 3 days for it to get here. We can't get things as quickly as we would like. So that is the biggest headache for us. Some of the positives, though, are all I have to do is go down and find Sarah in packaging and be like, hey, can you call your brother-in-law for me and have him come out here and fix this road issue we're having, and it will get done within an hour. Having people that are entrenched in the community does wonders for us to be able to get work done here on site. We have numbers and contacts for most everybody that runs in the county and city officials. So if I run into a problem, I go out and I'm like, hey, can I take your brother out to lunch and we can talk about this issue and figure out a way to get it done. And things get done pretty quickly for us.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think the community building aspect of that, and obviously, being in a rural area where everyone or most people do have family in those places is what's going to benefit you. But then on top of that, there's the responsibility of being that key partner in the community over time. Kelly, I guess for specific out in Colorado with Maggie's farm, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you guys see operating in a rural area?
I mean, like Dennis said, logistics, everything's very widespread. We even have our own courier team, but you sometimes just can't get what you need overnight.
Mm-hmm.
We also operate mostly out of Colorado Springs, which is a little bit more conservative. So, we've really had to make sure that everything we're doing is compliant and on the up and up, and, very straightforward with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Matt, with challenges that you've noticed of operating in a rural area, is it mainly centered around logistics? Are there other specific topics that you focus around?
It's not really. I'll be honest. Pottsville is rural, but it's not middle of nowhere rural. There is, we're not that far from Penn State, Hazleton. We're not far from Harrisburg. We're not Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. So, we have a lot of kind of major cities that are with less than an hour, and some smaller big cities. So we're rural, but it's not like we're in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And do you, Matt, I guess, as far as talking about some of the benefits of being this like premier operator and source for new jobs in a rural area, what does employee retention ideas look like for you in rural areas, and how do you think that compares to maybe experiences you've had in like metro or more populated areas?
I think with employee retention, it's not just about an area, it's all about kind of a mindset. It's all about the work culture. It's employee retention comes with a clear understanding of the position. It is clear job expectations. It's follow-up, it's accountability, it's making sure that you're keeping good people in roles and not ignoring problems. And when it comes down to it, it's a culture of knowing when you're doing something right and doing something wrong, and it's professional coaching. It's having a respect for the people. So I feel with the retention, and it's the same thing for rural and metro areas. It's just it's what comes down to culture and your people management.
Yeah, I think that rings true a lot, and probably something that Kelly can probably talk to us a lot about. Have you does Maggie's farm have any specific employee retention initiatives that they work towards with being in a rural area again?
So we found that one of the most attractive things for them has been benefit packages, as well as flexibility with hours. Many of them are families, young families, and more so than a higher wage, they're looking for a robust benefits package where we can help cover some of those medical costs, dental costs. Also, one that doesn't really cost the company anything has been laying out a career path for them. they can actually clearly see what levels they're going to be moving up to, what training they can expect, and see a future with us. You're not going to be cutting plants your whole life. You might just move up into, analytical role if that's something that, they're not good at.
Yeah, and I think too, understanding that, like we all know, is that the cannabis industry is, when you're joining an industry like this, is one of the fastest that you can move forward in your career in terms of promotion, development, skill development, and what have you. So I think bringing that message through, and while there are these agricultural or manufacturing related skills, you can still learn new skills in the process as well. I guess, Dennis, with Ascend Wellness and being in Barrie, how do you handle employee retention, and what are some ideas or initiatives that you might want to have moving forward, or could garner from this conversation as well?
So with our staff, some of the biggest things that they like the most is when we do extra PTO accrual. We do attainment bonuses, we do attendance bonuses for people. These things tend to keep people here in the seats and enjoying life. One of the things that we're looking into now that we've discovered is probably one of our biggest problems is childcare. There's not a lot of daycares and schools around here for people to drop their kids off. So we're looking into that. How do we help our families here? Because we do employ husbands and wives and cousins and mothers and brothers, and if they're all here working, who's going to be home taking care of that kid? So that's one of the initiatives that we're currently working on, is how do we help with childcare in order to make sure that people can come to work and they don't have to worry about what their kid or who's going to take care of their child.
Yeah. I think childcare is something that's not often discussed in the industry, right? In some of these rural places, but if there's any benefit to, it's not always possible in this industry to have those services be provided on site like it is in some other organizations, which is definitely a challenge I can see for operators like yourself. I guess, Kelly, and something that I think is, this story at large for rural hiring and the stories in some of these communities of how it's been able to revitalize maybe oft forgotten communities in the manufacturing world. How important would you say the cannabis industry is for some of these communities that you operate in? Like, is it truly revitalizing parts of the country that have been left behind in globalization, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, just in New Mexico, their first month alone with adult use, they made 4 million, and that all went back into in infrastructure. We've been welcomed with open arms out there, and I think as far as offering that career path for our employees, a lot of the other opportunities out there were retail or customer service or auto mechanics, things like that, where unless you're the owner of the business, there's not much more you can do to grow. Here, we're offering, a trajectory where they can learn new skills, they can move up compensation wise, and also, increase their education.
Yeah. And again, I think to talk to the excitement of some of those newer markets like New Mexico, for example, or out my way in New Jersey, I think the excitement is definitely prevalent too. And sometimes it's figuring out how to get all these people in at the same time, which comes more towards the talent acquisition lane of things. But I guess on your end, and Dennis, how in the Barrie community and Southern Illinois, how important would you categorize cannabis for some of these communities that you operate in and are part of on a daily basis?
I would say tremendously. Here in Barrie, especially, it was a town that was dying very quickly. There wasn't a lot here for people. There wasn't a lot going on. In rural areas when stuff like that happens, you experience a lot of brain drain. And the people that are innovative and have ideas are going other places. When we got here, I think that it was 40% of the buildings downtown were abandoned. Today, I think that there's only one building that isn't currently occupied. Anecdotally, there's a lot of new cars in town. Some of the older people were sitting there. You know, when you get into cannabis, at first, when you start your business, you're going to get a lot of young people that are interested in it. Like, hey, I'm interested in cannabis. I want to do this. Older people are more apprehensive about it. Like, I don't know about that. Bunch of stoners out there hanging out, getting high. And then you have all these kids riding around town with new cars, spending money, and then there's a lot of interest in what we got going on. Oh, you guys are hiring? What are you hiring for? I've got this experience. What can I do for you? So it's really the show of what we're doing that gets people in the door here.
Yeah, and Matt, I'll come to you in a second, but Dennis, since you brought it up there, a little bit more about the historical like brain drain concept from some of these rural areas because of the lack of economic opportunity. Sounds like you've seen some pretty clear examples about the cannabis industry allowing some of these people to stay in their hometowns. Are there any like specifically that you can share as far as stories go of people staying in these areas?
Yeah, so specifically, I've got at least one family here who, the mother is the matriarch. She has her family. She's got quite a few kids, quite a few grandkids. She started working here. All of her kids were out and about, and she told them, hey, we got this great opportunity here. They're hiring people. They pay well. You guys can come home. You can be closer to me. And now, there's only one child in the family who hasn't moved back. They're in Florida. I don't blame them. I come from Florida. I would be there too. But, so yeah, we have seen some families return to the area because they see that there is employment here, and it's not just employment to get you by. It's employment that will allow you a little bit of extra spending money at the end of the month.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it probably lends very well to kind of a tight-knit culture that you would have at an operation like that as well. Matt, I'm super interested to hear about kind of the Yingling story in Pottsville itself too, but would you be able to share a little bit of a career story, for example, about how those pieces came together and maybe have been able to re-employ people that have been lost to globalization again?
Before I got into cannabis, I ran restaurants in the, I guess it's the Philadelphia metro area. So I was in kind of a metro suburban area. And I always prided myself on career opportunities and giving people a path. If they could start out as a dishwasher, work a path to either front of the house management or a line cook or a saute cook, something that, it's helping find their path. And I've always kind of made it my mission to help give people career advancement. If they are someone that shows that they want it, I will do everything in my power to help them get there, as long as they're willing to put the work in. So it's just I've built a great network over the years with doing this. I think it's very rewarding to see people grow and be able to kind of really change their lives. People that just with a high school degree, and there's nothing wrong with that, they're making more than people that have advanced college degrees. And it's just through it's hard work, it's good a good cultural integration, and just a willingness to learn and be adaptable, and having that kind of agility to change with new regulations and new operations, because that's the reality of this industry.
Yeah,
our life can change every freaking week from the regulators, and we have to be able to adapt in a moment's notice. And it's just finding those people that can do it.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying too, the flexibility that some of these people that you're hiring at in some of these rural locations, obviously they've experienced this having to really having to pivot in terms of career paths in the past to probably prepare them pretty well for the cannabis industry and some of the regulatory challenges that the industry still faces on a daily basis. And I think kind of ending and going into more of like a strategy mode to find and entice talent in specific locations. Kelly, what would you say are some of your best practices for finding some of this talent in rural areas?
So originally we started using Indeed because we were hiring from another state. Once we got some good people in, it was word of mouth was hugely successful, as well as job fairs. Not everyone has computer access, not everyone has great internet access. And so being able to meet them on their level and bring them in, and they get to see the people that they're going to be working with, it's hugely valuable.
And do you, I guess on top of that, I know we talked a little bit about retaining talent in rural areas, but I guess outside of mainly like the compensation piece, I think you touched a little bit on giving them flexibility in terms of times that they're able to make it there and stuff, and especially in Colorado with weather and the winter and everything as well. Are there any other initiatives that you would like to see implemented, or have hopes will be implemented in the near future?
I love Dennis's idea of the childcare. I think that a lot of people struggle with that. And even if it's just finding them resources that they can reach out to would be hugely helpful. One of the smaller things that we've done that's actually been great for the staff is we've started bringing in lunch. We bring in groceries, we bring in things that they can cook and have, because there just isn't anywhere to leave for a lunch break and come back. And unless you want to brown bag it all the time, it just gets old. So we'll have barbecues and sit down and cook burgers, and everyone gets to sit and eat and talk and, start to really get to know their team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess with Matt, with your experience and maybe finding talent in Pottsville, even though it isn't, like you were saying, the most remote or rural area in the world, what were some of your best practices for finding and again retaining that talent over time?
For finding the talent, it's local town events. There are these malls that are kind of run down at this point. A lot of the businesses have kind of left, but there's still like some anchors. You have your Kohl's, your Boscov's, other Walmart's, Targets. So renting space and holding job fairs, holding information sessions so people can come in, because there are people that are walking through on the weekends around holidays. They're still shopping. So it's trying to find every opportunity in front of as many people as possible. And with retention, it comes down to culture. It's working with, your partners in HR, making sure that you have a great people program. It's benefits are good, but it's really of the day-to-day of treating the people and creating that great, healthy work environment and that collaboration. But it all comes with the different business partners within the business to kind of maintain that. It's all about culture.
Mm-hmm. And I think something interesting that you touched on, and I'll bring it over to Dennis to talk about, but you talked about some of these transferable skills, if you will, or industries to cannabis, where maybe the position they're coming from is either in the restaurant industry, fast food, or from a retail or light industrial or agricultural background. What would you say are some transferable skills to the cannabis industry where it was an improvement for them to work in cannabis versus where they were employed before?
Matt brought it up. He talked about working in restaurant industries. It's funny because line cooks, people that work in the kitchen, they for whatever reason they do tremendously well, especially in post-harvest and in harvest teams. They have the organization. They understand the fast-pacedness of what it is that they're doing. The other thing is manufacturing. I mean, manufacturing and manufacturing. Just because we're doing cannabis doesn't mean it's not manufacturing. There's a lot of ADM and food manufacturing places around here. And those people have come here, and as we started to mechanize the business, they know these machines, and they're like, hey, we used to do this. We weren't packaging weed, but this is some of the maintenance things that we would do, and that's gone a long way to help out our packaging, especially. And a lot of these people are from farms where they had to fix things themselves, so they're very handy. Over in cultivation, they can do a lot of their own plumbing just by using the talent that they have there. We have a maintenance staff when you utilize it, but sometimes these guys can just fix it themselves very quickly without having to go through the bureaucracy of our maintain X and putting it in and having somebody come do it. So just the versatility of the workforce that we see around here is tremendous.
Yeah, and I think like you were saying, in specific areas, I think a lot of the common theme is like people that you're bringing into the industry at large, and for folks that are listening as well, it's a lot more than what's on the piece of paper sometimes. So I think that having some of these community initiatives and events, and whether it's a career hiring fair or what will you, is definitely beneficial when you're located in a rural area. Kelly, has Maggie's Farm held any kind of community engaged hiring initiatives, or specific where you're able to pick out skills that are fits for some of the positions you hire for?
That's actually something that's going to be coming up for us as we start to roll out our dispensaries. That's probably a little more of a appropriate, venue for that. But it's something I'm definitely looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, you mentioned some of those, holding them in these community events in either Connecticut or Walmart or what have you.
Yeah, it's in these malls. Also, it's being part of events that are important to the community. It's the start of fishing season, and they have these great events, and it's a fundraiser for the township. The firehouse, things that you can do for the community that have impact to the people within the neighbors. So it's finding where is the community's interest and making sure that you're there and you're being involved. So it's besides the people walking by, it's getting the name out there in there's events all the time. And you have to know what your people are enjoying, what is that community passion involved in, and getting there and making sure it's in an appropriate setting. You're not going to show up at a Little League game. You have to be smart with your decision making of where you are.
Yeah, being everywhere at the same time, but also being cognizant of where you're going to be having some of those initiatives as well. But I think kind of bringing everything together, and lastly, Dennis, I'll start with you. What advice do you have for anyone who is thinking about a career in cannabis in a smaller town or rural location?
I would say go for it. You don't ever get the jobs you don't go after. Being in a small town is difficult, especially if you're used to that big city life. Moving out here, it's the first time I've lived in an area that's so small. But coming out here and realizing that this business isn't just a business, it's a community builder. And it is very entrenched in the people that live here, and they want to see the success of this place because our success brings their success. And having people that have bought into that, not because they're interested in cannabis, but they're interested in their community. And I would say it's worth it. Every 4 hours I got to drive to get to an airport, it's worth it.
Yeah, it definitely is worth it. And Matt, I'm sure you'd say a lot of the same, but what other advice do you have for anyone that's thinking about a career in cannabis in a smaller town?
Don't feel that you need cannabis or agricultural experience. There's a lot of roles. Just know what you feel you'll be happy doing. Understand going into this industry, it's hard work, and you have to know you're on your feet, you're using your hands. The advice I can give is it's a good cover letter or a good statement kind of that can kind of get your point across and why you feel you'd be a good fit.
Yeah. And if you're sitting there going back and forth on, do I apply, do I not apply, are my skills a match, just apply at the end of the day, because I think there's definitely a fit all the time wherever you're needed within some of these organizations too. Kelly, same question, and wrapping this up here, what advice would you have for someone thinking about a career in a rural area?
I would definitely jump on it. I mean, there's so many facets to a cannabis operation that isn't just cultivation or processing. There's automation, QC. There's so many different ways to enhance their education and their resume even, and to ask a lot of questions, to show a lot of initiative. And if there's something that you like that maybe not necessarily is part of your role, inquire about it.
Yeah. And yeah, I think learning as much as you can and asking the questions when you do have them, instead of just feeling like you're expected to know everything from day one is definitely an important attribute to anyone that's looking to join the industry or listening here today. So I wanted to obviously thank you all three again for joining us this afternoon. Before we do switch to the Q&A section, Dennis, Kelly, or Matt, do you have any other important insights for us on the topic of rural hiring in cannabis that we may have missed?
Matt mentioned something where he said, just go ahead and apply. And I'm 100% right there behind him, because because you're applying for something doesn't mean that there's an opportunity out there that you haven't seen that these companies are looking for. Especially when they're fresh started. We started about a year ago or 3 years ago. About a year into it, we were like, hey, we need CI, we need quality here. We had people who were applying with those backgrounds, and we were like, I think lightning just struck. Get this person in the door right now. Always apply and go for it. But no, I think besides that, I'm good.
Perfect. Matt or Kelly?
I think I'm good.
Awesome. Well,
No,
go ahead,
yeah.
Matt.
No, I think it's just it's go in there knowing that it's going to be a lot of fun, and I highly recommend doing it because there's so much career potential here. It's not just growing, like it was talked about with Kelly and Dennis. You have quality, you have logistics, you have kind of the people side, the grow, the make, the sell. There's so many different paths you can take, and if you find what you feel give you job satisfaction, because there is a lot of satisfaction out of this industry because of what we're doing. It is helping people.
Yeah. And like you're saying too, it may not, the availability of the industry may not be everywhere for everyone at this point, but as we've seen even over the past 6 months, I think that's changing pretty fast. So you don't necessarily have to worry about having to move to Colorado or California, although they're great places, just to get your foot in the door with the industry at this point anymore. But let me pull up here just a few questions from the Q&A section, and I'll ask each of you individually the questions, but don't hesitate to jump in if you have a strong opinion or insight on one of those. So let me get to the bottom of this one here. Interesting question from Aaron Hunter on here. He said, why has it been so hard for those of us outside of the industry to get a job in the industry, especially for those of us who have been in multiple disruptive business sectors without prior knowledge? Dennis, do you want to tackle that one, or do you have any insight there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of people I know in this industry were working in other industries. Unfortunately, sometimes it is a little bit of who do you know? Can you get someone to get in and put in a good word? I would tell Aaron, go ahead and send his resume my way, because we're always hiring, and I'm interested to see what his background looks like. And then I could give him some real advice about, hey, change this, think about this, and you should be looking at this.
Awesome. Yeah. Matt or Kelly have any insight there as far as getting in the industry, which we were discussing a little bit, but just in a little bit deeper detail?
I think with Dock House, it's that grow, there was no real other grows near us. So there wasn't any industry experience for the most part. I think there were some people that were relocating. I would say 5 to 10% of the workforce had industry experience. So it comes down to, how is that resume? What are the transferable skills? And understanding that you got to put some work in too. If it gets filtered out with Indeed or, application tracking systems that you have, we all have these Facebook feeds. Our names are all out there. It's all public record. Mm-hmm. So if you want an opportunity, put the work into it, reach out. There are many people that I hired at Dock House that just found me on Facebook, found me at LinkedIn, found my email because it is on an application. Everything is public in cannabis. It's really easy to get us.
To add in, I have had to accost people on LinkedIn. Hey, tell me about your business. I want to know more. Here's my resume. What's happening?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Kelly, would you say more of the same?
Yeah, I mean, I find that hugely refreshing. I love to hire attitudes. I like to hire people that are eager and reach out to us and are very tenacious about joining, the industry. I think, some, human resources departments might go with that relevant background as a way to, move away from that learning curve, but there's going to be a learning curve no matter what. And if you have a robust training system and you have a good mentor support system for them, they'll surprise you for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think a pretty interesting question here too is asking about it, do you find flyers and like local newspaper advertising more helpful in rural areas versus like, I think Kelly, you were talking about posting on Indeed for some of these positions versus some of these more online postings and applications in metro areas. Have you seen any difference between the two, Kelly?
No, we still get a very good response on Indeed, but there is a difference in how you have to pursue that candidate. You can't communicate with them through the application and expect them to get back to you right away. A lot of people don't know how to use, that side of Indeed. So a lot of it will be looking them up, finding them on LinkedIn, reaching out, saying, hey, you sent us your resume. I'd love to chat with you. We have a recruiter that does a lot of that. Also a lot of networking on social sites that are, Reddit or, Vanks, different Facebook, pages. A lot of the time you can find someone who, worked for a great competitor or, a company you're interested in and ask them if they're, willing to take a look at what you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt, when you were initially hiring, did you do any for Dock House? Did you have any specific initiatives where you're posting in newspapers or putting up flyers or anything like that?
It was working with the town first, putting stuff at the library, the local, working with there are a lot of great employment agencies and especially in rural areas with job starts. Talking to them, they have big pool of people that are looking for jobs. So you work with these local agencies that are helping to find a job and housing security. There's a lot of great groups that you work with that can give you that first wave. And we've had great success with Indeed and the different platforms it kind of it posts to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And a different question that seems to be a repetitive theme in some of this Q&A is more about like the aspect of moving from a city to a more rural location for a job. Dennis, would you maybe in some of your experience, what are some of the benefits you'd see that you from moving from a city to a rural location that you might not realize are waiting for you if you move?
Nature and how much it does to heal the soul. Getting out and just seeing fields and greenery and forest. It does tremendous for you to be able to get out there and hike and see this stuff. Being in cities, you don't always get that. So
yeah, sometimes, and Kelly, you can probably attest to it. If you're living in LA, you're surrounded by the beach and the mountains, but sometimes that's a long drive to get out to some of those places. Kelly, how would you, I guess, describe the culture in more rural operations and how you think it might differ from sites in more urban areas?
It's a lot more family oriented. It's definitely a lot more family oriented. One of the benefits of moving out there is cost of living. We tend to hire also, family members and people that come with word of mouth. So they do have that camaraderie that's established.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question I just wanted to touch here before we wrap up, Matt, maybe you have some insight here. It's asking, have you ever had to move some of leadership positions or roles requiring high levels of education to different areas or working remotely, maybe because you couldn't find talent in a rural area?
Yeah, we've had to do relocation and bring people into the areas if we couldn't find qualified individuals for some of the the director positions. We've done that.
Awesome. Yeah. Dennis, any experience on that front as far as I know relocation is something that we all deal with, in especially in cultivation roles, right? And you know, it may be more challenging from a housing perspective, but beneficial in a cost of living perspective in some of these rural areas. How do you see the two differ if you know, you personally had to relocate to a more rural area?
So yeah, we do a lot of relocating. The good thing about our company is, you know, if we have somebody and we see something in them, and we think that we can develop this person into them, into something, into a role, then we will actually take them and send them to another location to be trained by somebody that has plenty of experience. You know, this person can then guide this person through the job and what they do. And what's really great about us and Ascend and what we do here is there's a lot of support and team building. And, you know, all you have to do is reach out to people in your department and say, hey, I need help with this. Can someone come assist me? And they will, you know, hop on Teams and walk them through whatever it is. Hey, I'm having a problem with this Excel sheet. I don't know how to make this do what I want. You can just reach out to, you know, our gurus on Excel or in finance, and they will happily jump on a call and assist you in what it is that you're doing. So it's really more about the development with the people that we have, and using those heroes to come over here and train those people into what we need from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the use of the word heroes in there as well, because I think moving into the industry, we've all become heroes in one way or another. But I think that's a good place to wrap it up at the end here. Thanks again, the three of you, Kelly, Dennis, and Matt, for your time this afternoon. I think everyone really appreciated your input and experiences overall, and I know I personally enjoyed the conversation. But that's what we'll leave it there for now.